Welcome back everyone to Second Wind EDH's deck tech number 4. The commander I chose for the sea monster horde is Runo Stromkirk. Runo's an interesting commander as he is a flip commander, and he flips into Krothos, Lord of the Deep. So let's dive right into it with the man himself. Runo's a 1/4 vampire cleric that costs 1 blue-black with flying, and when Runo Stromkirk enters the battlefield, put up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If a creature card with mana value 6 or greater is revealed this way, transform Runo Stromkirk. Runo transforms into Krothos, Lord of the Deep, a 3/5 Kraken horror with flying, and whenever Krothos, Lord of the Deep attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. If that creature is a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent, create 2 of those tokens instead. The whole point of this deck is to manipulate the top of your library so you can flip Runo Stromkirk. So you can swing out with Krothos and another creature to create more and more powerful sea monsters. Let's jump right into those monsters with our first set of creature cards. These first set of creatures are dedicated solely to make our creatures flying or straight up unblockable. Wander is a 2/2 incarnation with flying, and as long as Wander is in your graveyard and you control an island, creatures you control have flying. Stormtide Leviathan is an 8/8 with Island Walk, and all lands are islands in addition to their other types. Creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. Serpent of Yawning Depths is a 6/6 that makes Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents you control unblockable except by other Krakens, Leviathans, Octopus, and Serpents. Archetype of Imagination removes flying from all other creatures and gives all your creatures flying. Deep Channel Mentor straight up gives blue creatures you control unblockable. Our next group of creatures is all about bouncing permanents back to their owner's hands. Brinelin the Moon Serpent lets you bounce a non-land permanent to its owner's hand if you cast a spell with converted mana cost 6 or greater. Whenever you cast a spell with Hullbreaker Horror, you get to either return a target spell you don't control to its owner's hand or return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Aether Squall Ancient gives you 3 energy counters at the beginning of your upkeep. Whenever you pay 8 energy counters, you may return all other creatures to their owner's hands. Whenever Scourge of Fleets enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. Slimvoda acts as a one-sided board wipe for this deck with, when Slimvoda the Rising Deep enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return all creatures to their owner's hands except for Merfolk, Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. Our next group of creatures starts off with Wormhole Serpent, a 3/5 Serpent that costs 4 and a blue with a 3 and a blue, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Wexiel the Risen Deep is a 5/8 Kraken with Island Walk and Swamp Walk, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into a graveyard this turn, exiled instead. Tremocratus is an 8/8 Kraken that has Hexproof unless it's attacking or blocking, and Tremocratus can't be blocked unless all creatures defending player controls blocks it. Spawning Kraken is a big one for this deck with, whenever a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent you control deals combat damage to a player, create a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token. Copying Spawning Kraken with Krothos over and over gets you more 9/9 Kraken tokens. Inkwell Leviathan is a simple 7/11 Leviathan with Island Walk, Trample, and Shroud. Thrix the Sudden Storm makes spells you cast with converted mana cost 5 or greater 1 less to cast and can't be countered. Trench Behemoth is a 7/7 Kraken with, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, target creature an opponent controls attacks during its controller's next combat phase if able. Nezahal is a 7/7 Elder Dinosaur that can't be countered, and it gives you no maximum hand size, and whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, you draw a card. Nemesis of Reason is a nasty combo with Krothos, Lord of the Deep, because whenever you attack with him and Krothos, you get 2 more copies, and when Nemesis of Reason attacks, defending player mills 10 cards, making your opponents mill 30 cards with 1 attack from Nemesis of Reason. Lockmere Serpent has pay 1 blue, sacrifice an island. Lockmere Serpent can't be blocked this turn. Pay 1 black, sacrifice a swamp, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Pay a blue and a black, exile 5 cards from an opponent's graveyard, return Lockmere Serpent from your graveyard to your hand. Nadir Kraken has, whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Nadir Kraken and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. When Mirror Hall enters the battlefield, it can become a copy of any target creature on the battlefield, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types. Junkwinder has, whenever a token enters the battlefield under your control, tap target non-land permanent opponent controls. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Last 4 on the creatures list start off with Icebreaker Kraken. It's an 8/8 that has, when Icebreaker Kraken enters the battlefield, artifacts and creatures target opponent controls don't untap during that player's next untap step. Rottide Gargantua is up next with, when Rottide Gargantua exploits a creature, each opponent sacrifices a creature. When Gyruda enters the battlefield, each player mills 4 cards. Put a creature card with an even mana value from among the milled cards onto the battlefield under your control. Last up for the creatures, we have Dreadlight Monstrosity, a 5/5 crab horror that costs 4 and 2 blue with pay 3, 2 blue and tap. Pay 3 and 2 blue, Dreadlight Monstrosity can't be blocked this turn, activate only if you own a card in exile. Our one and only planeswalker for this deck is Ashiok Nightmare Muse. His +1 is create a 2/3 blue and black nightmare creature token with whenever this creature attacks or blocks, each opponent exiles the top 2 cards of their library. His -3 is return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then that player exiles a card from their hand. His -7 is you may cast up to 3 face-up cards your opponents own from exile without paying their mana costs. Now we'll move along to our artifacts, kicking it off with all of our mana rocks. Both Commander Sphere and Arcane Signet add 1 mana of any color in your commander's identity. Dimir Signet is a mana rock that you can pay 1 and tap and add blue and black. Tap Soul Ring to add 2 colorless. Our next group of artifacts kick it off with Swiftfoot Boots. Equipped creature has Hexproof and Haste. Helm of the Host is up next, a 4-cost legendary artifact equipment with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except the copy isn't legendary. If the equipped creature is legendary, that token gains haste. Mirror Box makes the legend rule not apply to permanents you control, and each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1, and each non-token creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other creature that you control that has the same name as that creature. Mirror Box makes it that if you want to, you can copy legendary creatures with your commander. Mimic Vat is a great way to use and abuse ETBs of expensive creatures. Coat of Arms gives each creature +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least 1 creature type with it. That's going to do it for the artifacts. Now we're going to move on to all of our enchantments, starting off with Aqueous Form. Enchanted creature can't be blocked, and whenever enchanted creature attacks, scry 1. Up next is Reflections of Littlejohra, an enchantment that costs 4 and a blue with, as Reflections of Littlejohra enter the battlefield, choose a creature type. When you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell. For 1 and a black, Animate Dead lets you reanimate a creature in your graveyard, and Mirror Maid enters the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield. Arcane Adaptation changes every single creature in your deck into the chosen creature type. Next list starts off with Reconnaissance Mission, an enchantment for 2 and 2 blue with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Next is Kiora Bests the Sea God, an enchantment saga for 5 and 2 blue. Its first lore counter is create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token with hexproof. Lore counter number 2 taps all non-land permanents opponents control and they don't untap during their controller's next untap step. The third lore counter gains control of target permanent an opponent controls. Untap it. Ominous Seas is an enchantment for 1 and a blue, with whenever you draw a card, put a Foreshadow counter on Ominous Seas. Remove 8 Foreshadow counters on Ominous Seas, create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token. Black Market has whenever a creature dies, put a charge counter on Black Market. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, add black for each charge counter on Black Market. Quest for Ulah's Temple has, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you may reveal it and put a quest counter on Quest for Ulah's Temple. At the beginning of each end step, if there are 3 or more quest counters on Quest for Ulah's Temple, you may put a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. We'll start our sorceries off, giving us an extra turn with Part the Water Veil. Whelming Wave returns all creatures to their owner's hands except for Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. Rite of Replication creates a token copy of target creature. If it was kicked, it creates 5 of those tokens instead. Extract from Darkness mills each player 2 cards, and you put a creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Victimize lets you sacrifice a creature and return 2 target creatures from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. We'll start off our instance with all of our counter spells. Counter Squall, Negate, Rewind, and Counter Spell each counter target spell. Our next group starts off with Engulf the Shore, an instant for 3 and a blue with return to their owner's hands all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands you control. Otherworldly Gaze is an instant that costs 1 blue that lets you look at the top 3 cards of your library and put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest back on top of your library in any random order. Unwind is a counterspell for 2 and a blue, and Frantic Search lets you draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards, untap up to 3 lands. The group that's last but not least is always lands. We're going to start off this land list with all of our Dimir options. Choked Estuary, Dismal Backwater, Sunken Hollow, and Temple of Deceit all tap for 1 blue or 1 black. Our next group starts off with our choice lands. Path of Ancestry and Command Tower both tap for any color in your commander's identity, while Evolving Wilds lets you sacrifice it and search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Ice Tunnel is simply just another Dimir choice. Bojuka Bog kicks off our next land group by letting you exile target player's graveyard. Halimar Depths lets you look at the top 3 cards of your library, tap add 1 blue. Pay 2 and sacrifice Roadside Reliquary to draw a card if you control an artifact, and draw a card if you control an enchantment. Takanuma Abandoned Mire lets you return a target creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. Our final group of the day starts off with Reliquary Tower, giving you no maximum hand size. Rogue's Passage lets you pay 4 and target creature can't be blocked this turn. And finally we have 13 islands and 12 swamps. This deck comes out to be about $125 with the release of this video. That's all for this week's Deck Tech. Thank you so much for watching, and please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Second Wind EDH.